Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
So today we're going to talk about curveballs. Curveballs in life, we've all gone through them. Many of us have gone through a lot of them. A curveball can be a lot of things. It can be a sudden move, a sudden loss, or a change, unexpected change in your job, certainly financial stress, health issues, and the loss of a loved one. And that's not an exhaustive list. That's just some of the examples that probably a lot of us have gone through. And the thing about curveballs is that the effects of the changes that result from these curveballs can have a lasting effect on us, a compound effect if you've had quite a few of them. And the key to mitigating those effects is how we deal with them. So, for some people who choose to avoid it or deny it or even try to control it, those are the ways that can lead to some long lasting negative effects. On the other hand, if we approach them by accepting them and adapting to them, we have a better chance of not just surviving the effects, but really thriving after these curveballs hit us. And so today we're going to talk about our own curveballs that we have faced, how we dealt with them, and what were the long lasting effects of the way we dealt with them. And just to note, the way that we approach these things takes a lot of self-reflection. It's a process for sure. And it takes a lot of courage to move in a direction where you can face it, accept it, and try to move forward from it. So that's the plan for today. We're going to talk about that. Is everyone ready?
Ready.
Ready.
All right, here we go. So, the first question that I have for you is to tell us about one major curveball that you faced in your life. And I will start with mom.
Well, life shows us so many times some happenings that can be unexpected or that bring certain scary thoughts, but or rethinking what we really want to do. But for example, for me, I would have to say, thinking on my last years, the major, I think, curveball was getting married and leaving my country, my family, coming to another country, and actually several countries and cities because, my ex-husband being a U.S. Marine, we would change every couple of years, and every change was new friends, new schools for our children, and that would bring a certain, scary moments of let's see what's going to happen. Other than that, of course, the major curveball was in people that have gone through a divorce can feel the uncertainty of a big change in your life. A big change for me after the divorce was, of course, the major decisions, a more restricted budget. At the time of the divorce, two of our children were going to college, and that was a major change for them too, because instead of two parents encouraging them, we had to face more than anything. I think in a big change like that is financial difficulties.
Yeah, for sure. When I get to my piece, I'm starting to reflect on some of what you said as the parent or the adult in the situation of a divorce. Especially as an adult now, I could feel the terror of being on your own after so long as a pair, and then financial stability was a big one. And throughout most of your married life, my life as a dependent, we had a lot of unexpected moves. And I think as a kid, it felt abrupt, but I also think it was something that made me adapt to change because it was something that I couldn't control, that I learned to get used to. And so I think change was something that I always expected and maybe even played into my own curveballs, which I'll get to in a little bit. But as a parent, I could see where it would make you very uneasy because it's not just about you, it's about your kids too. And so that is a major curveball. Yeah. How about you, Aunt Lauda?
Well, me, I guess the first one took me to the second one. The first one was when I got fired from a job after 25 years of working there. Life brought me to a screeching halt that I never saw coming. All of a sudden, after working hard and, doing things for the company, they come to you and say, well, thank you for your service. And I really, it felt terrible. It felt very bad because I realized that, you gave everything you have for that work that you really love, and you feel betrayed. The thing is that when the life has stopped you that way, you realize that what are you going to do? This is when I was 50 years old. Who knows who's going to hire me? It's going to, start all over again when you really build a career in this company. It's really terrible. It's a traumatized, definitely. It was really, especially like you say, financial wise, because you're not going to have that income anymore. So here you are, like myself, I have a mortgage to accomplish, and I have a teenager in high school. So things that you have to work and pay because it's your responsibility. So it was really tough. It was really hard to believe that a company that has always teach you values as a human being, all of a sudden they betray you. That was the one.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, you give so much of yourself. And I think this has changed with generations because now they say the current generations have a bigger tendency to switch jobs a lot. But I think we all came from generations where it was like you build a career in a place because you feel like you give as much as you're given back, right? There's an expectation of exchange, like you say, for your value. And so we've had careers that are 20 plus, 30 plus years, right? And 50 is young to experience that abrupt stop, as you say, and to feel like the slap in the face or the punch in the stomach of, I've given so much, I've been so dedicated, and then this is how I'm treated. And I think another piece of that is that it's easy to build identity into the work that you do, especially when it's a career, right? You feel it's as much a part of you as other parts of your life. And so there is the reflection of suddenly there's this halt. What do I do now? Not just the financial stress, but also what is my path now, right? But just like mom's curveball, the weight of not, this isn't just affecting you, this is affecting your family, right? Your son, your livelihood, all these things. Now what do I do? And being as young as you were, that's a big, not like you were saying I was going to retire in 6 months. This is, I still had a lot of years to give. So what do I do with that? And you said that it led to a second curveball. I don't know if you want to talk about that now or a little bit down the line.
We can talk about later, but the thing is that this one brought me to a illness that I never expected to have. Like you say, I will never have that kind of thing. It was cancer. I was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I think all of it was because of the, how you call it, physiosomatic
Mm-hmm.
illness,
Mm-hmm.
because the emotion was so terrible and I feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when I came that day, I totally feel it in my body. It was a change that you can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely will take you to a worse
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah. We'll talk in a little bit about
Mhm.
how we each dealt with it, maybe had long effects, long lasting effects for each of us. And that for sure was one that you experienced after that major curveball with your work. And
Exactly.
it's interesting because I'm going to talk about my curveball, but for a lot of us, it's a couple things. It's sudden financial stress, sudden break in what you expected your life path was going to be, right? For me, I thought of a couple too. One, funny enough, mom, was what you mentioned when I was in school, I think entering second year when the divorce happened, and there was a feeling that my dad was going to help with some of the expenses. And I was pretty lucky to get a pretty decent scholarship, but I still had to pay quite a bit. It was an expensive school. And so entering second year, hearing about the divorce, and then later hearing about, well, there's no guarantee he's going to continue helping you, was a major curveball for me because I worked hard to get into that school. That school was expensive. I knew that. And I was faced with how am I going to pivot and make this still happen? Because that was my goal. This is still going to happen one way or the other. And then to create a plan for myself, which I'll talk about in a bit. But that was one curveball. That's me just starting my early adulthood life, right? Like there's an excitement about starting as an adult in school and having all this opportunity, but being faced with this real challenge, like I could be forced to stop. The second curveball happened when I was just starting to work for a company, a corporation, and I had started in this fast track leadership program that guaranteed quick movement so you could move into really high executive positions pretty early on. And it was nice to have gotten that job, but it was really just a job for financial security with the possibility of like I could end up choosing this as a career or not. But I already planned to go into my master's at the same time. And so my thought was when I reached that fork in the road of do I continue post my graduate school to be a therapist or do I stay with this company that has good prospects too? What do I want to do? But that plan was cut short when it came time to actually start school. And even though they had told me I could do a master's when it came time, my supervisor said it's not a master's in business. So you have to choose either go to school or keep this job. So I was faced with a quick turnaround decision to say what I want to do. And I had a vision for myself that really pushed me through to say, I'll deal again with financial insecurity because what I want is to become a therapist. If I was asked today at that moment what I wanted to do, that's what I wanted to do. And so at the risk of knowing, I had undergrad school bills to pay, basic living bills to pay, and no job, but I would, start the path to something I really wanted to do. That's what I chose to do. Yeah. And then I kind of figured the rest of the stuff out. But, it's about financial security and what's my life path for me that I was confronted with those curveballs. Dealing with these curveballs that we had, there's something about how we deal with it that impacts the long-term effects. And so with this, I'm curious, what were the things that, or the people that you leaned on to get through these periods of time? So, Mom, we can start with you.
Well, yeah. Again, that's what I was saying that with the divorce, instead of you and your brother having the help that is what should be, you were on your own. And that was difficult. I felt after the divorce and all the situations happening with the hands tied, and you feel sometimes doubtful of your own value. What did I do? How did this, thing happen? And again, it's not just you. Well, I relied a lot on my faith. I prayed for courage for me, for our children. Then the family, of course, supported me. Even from far away, I had family support. Even not being in the same city, we're very close. Quite frankly, the thought of the children, my children, I relied on that thought that kept me going and trying to not only face that, but make decisions and better myself and be there for the children as much as I could. But I think, yeah, I relied a lot on my faith and the thought of my family, especially the children.
How about you, Aunt Loda?
Totally agree. I definitely remember when I came back from work that day and I was like, shaking and my body was so mixed up. And the first person I saw is my mother. And my mother said, what's going on? And I said, Mama, they fired me, and she definitely went up and said, directly to my eyes and say, we don't know why things happen, but there is a reason. And she actually mentioned, they crucified Lord God, our God. Why can we suffer that much? So you'll be okay. And after that, of course, you guys helped me a lot. All my family. I mean, it's because your word start, falling apart, and those words and those support that they give you in the family is so important to realize what's going on, right? Don't even think what's going to happen afterwards, but at that time you have to realize what happened. Why me? Yeah, I got a lot of support from you guys, especially you. And, my friends, my close friends, my mom. And of course, all that support helped me. Honestly, to the point that I have to get up and look at myself and say, come on, you have to get up and work again. Like you said, this is your options. This is what you have. I mean, you still, you're 50, but you're still young. I mean, go on. you have more to give, you know. It's a matter of patient time, that support that you receive, the love that your family gives you.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I would echo the same. I mean, I think I know not everyone has the same sense of faith or spirituality, but I think everyone has a belief in something greater than themselves. I mean, for sure, we are Catholic and we really lean into faith a lot. And I think I would agree in my moments. I think it was leaning on family, knowing who was depending on me. And in that, I think it tapped into my faith because witnessing other people's challenges and how they powered through by leaning into faith was also, I think, something that then triggered for me. There's a reason this is happening. And it's hard to make that to realize that, right, all the time, because the impact of something that intense, we're human. And I think we have that human experience of like, why me? Like, I worked so hard, or, I did the right thing. And why is this happening? It's hard not to feel that flood of feelings, right? But how great to have, even to have grandma, who I know we've said before, is someone who lived by faith every day so intensely, to vocalize it to you. Because I think a lot of times we don't have someone who necessarily vocalizes it to us. It's just sort of this voice in our heads because that's what we've been taught, or it's been ingrained in us kind of throughout life's lessons. But to have someone verbalize in that moment to you, remember this, right? This is the thing that grounds us, helped you for a moment. And it is an up and down. I think that's the other thing to recognize and to validate. It's a roller coaster, right? Because things don't get better overnight with things like this. And so you have to give yourself the space to be human and to feel the lows and the anger. A lot of the things I said were curveballs are like losses and the process of loss, right? Kubler-Ross said there's DABDA, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, right? We go through phases and not just in that order. We go back and forth. And so even when we think we're on the other side of something, it can sneak back up and you can feel those anger feelings or the depression. And I think giving yourself the space to do that is also fair because, like I said earlier, to avoid or to deny them has worse long-term effects. So I think definitely leaning into faith, leaning into community, family and friends was helpful for me too. And holding on to a vision also, right? Like, what's the thing that I still see for myself? I listen to a lot of podcasts and a lot of people who've achieved a lot. And even though they struggled in the beginning, the number one thing was that they held on to a vision for themselves, right? Even when things were really difficult. You just have to believe if there's something that you feel you're meant to do or meant to become, that's you have to hold on to that. And so I think in my second curveball, that was certainly something, I had the opportunity to stay in a really high paying job with a guarantee of success early on, or start from scratch to try to become a therapist, knowing it was not going to be, a year-long process. It was going to be a few years process, but that's what I wanted to do. So I held on to it. I wanted to take the time just to cover a couple tips for people too, because we're kind of highlighting some of these things, but to encapsulate it into a couple of useful tips. One is to cultivate a hopeful mindset. And I think we touched on pieces of that, but I think this includes like affirmations. Some people do daily positive affirmations. Some people kind of laugh at it, but it really is about especially when you're in your lows, right? It's important to keep positive affirmations in the forefront. I think once before, and Lauda, you mentioned this, it's as simple as practicing gratitude, but it's also reflecting your own self-worth because a lot of these curveballs make us feel like we're not worthy for some reason.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think it's as simple as that.
Mhm.
Visualizing success, like I talked about, is holding on to a vision that there's possibility, right, of something greater that really can switch your approach to seeing through this and overcoming this challenge. Building resilience, practicing self-care, which is a big one, and leaning on support. These are times where routines we have for our own wellness, exercise, good eating, good sleep, they can fall apart when we have these curveballs because we're just so distraught and suddenly things feel like they don't mean as much, right? But these are the things that make you strong, not just physically, but mentally to be able to survive and overcome these things. Taking action, which, the pace for that's different for everyone depending on the curveball they experience, but starting to brainstorm solutions, making a plan for like, okay, how this is my reality now. How am I going to get through this to get to the point that I want to be? It's small steps, but it's creating that plan, implementing the plan, monitoring your progress. Sometimes having someone to hold you accountable helps you stay on track. And then appreciating simple joys because I know it's hard when you're in the middle, when you're in that beginning phase of hurt from the curveball. It's hard to say, you know what, I have my health. I woke up today,
Exactly. I'm alive.
I'm alive. I'm
Yes.
alive. And when we talk about your process out loud, this will become a reality. But, because people might say, well, I don't want to be alive in this state. But you have
Mm,
to realize your breathing that morning is a gift in itself because that
Totally.
gives you the opportunity to become even more, right?
Correct.
And there's a movie that came out, I think, last year. There's a comedian I follow, Tig Notaro, and Come See Me in the Good Light. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Aunt Lauda, but it's the story of a poet who got cancer, actually had several bouts of cancer, I believe, before this
Okay.
last one that actually resulted in their death. And the process of that last year of realizing like this is different, this feels different. But it sounds like it could be a really sad movie, and there's moments, of course, that are sad as this couple realizes like this could be it. But it's
Yes.
really about stopping and appreciating the simple things of life that you still
Totally.
are here to enjoy. And it's an opportunity for people who are living to think about we take so much for granted. And
A lot.
sometimes it's because we are investing so much in other things that we think are the thing to invest in that we overlook the fact that we have a lot of things to appreciate. And sometimes these curveballs really force you into that. And like you say, Aunt Letta, sometimes it feels like a hard stop that somebody else is giving you because you have lost sight of those things. And so I think just taking inventory of what you do have to appreciate can make you pause from the lows of the curveball to really thinking like, this is what I have. This is what, it's like the glass half empty or half full. This is what my cup is full with. I need to hold on to that. So those are just some general tips. But, it's not easy to overcome these curveballs. And I know, Aunt Lauda, you talked about the major curveball you had and then how it influenced another curveball. So I want to talk a little bit about that because the long-term effects of struggling with overcoming a curveball does have long-lasting effects. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, definitely. First of all, I really believe in these emotions that will bring you physically reaction. I remember that day I felt terrible. I mean, I really felt that I was dying. My head hurt, everything hurt. So 5 years after, I start having these symptoms. So, anyways, they diagnosed me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I think, of course, it's another trauma. It's another thing that you have to realize that this is serious, right? Because when you stop working or something like you said, you have the will to start all over again and whatnot. But illness sometimes can be really difficult, and especially if you have a background, with your friends or with people that you love, and cancer means death, right? Usually that's what it is, but not anymore. So anyhow, I survived. I realized that this was another thing that I had to deal with, and after working on, I read a lot of articles. I follow people that they were having this situation as well, and yeah, I definitely believe that this was part of the physomatic illness. All my emotions back then hurt me that bad. I was really a healthy person. Usually what I do, I eat well, I exercise, I have my supplements, I sleep kind of well and things like that. But this was totally out of control. So again, is when, like you said, is when you realize and say, why me? Why me again? Right? Because I'm in the middle of situations that, how am I going to survive this? I don't know, but I will. And here you have the support of people the support. And this is your will that are you really done? Are you really done in life, or you want to do more things in your faith? Of course, I definitely think that this second trauma, this second curveball, brought me closer to God in a spiritual wise. Because I realized and said, you know what? We are in transit, right? We're in transit and we're doing things that will help us on the other life, whatever you believe. But it's true. It's true. So when you think that, when you go closer to it, and I definitely believe in miracles, because 5 years of this thing really put me in my mind that, I'm going to make it. And it's all about you. It's about your mind, because the mind is really powerful.
Mhm.
So when you focus on that and you say, come on, I know this is happening, and people can tell you so many things, right? Again, cancer. What are you going to do with cancer? I'm going to do everything, right? This is just another thing that I have to keep looking for it, and I have to change my things, how to react. Life teaches you something. And this is the second time that teach me something.
Mhm.
And nowadays, I really feel proud of myself. I really feel fulfilled with all the situation that happened to me. I'm cancer free. Time is your best ally, I would say. So I learned about it, and I just let it go. And the support with your family, and of course, a professional therapist is so important.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's so
For
important.
sure. For sure. And that's one of the tips I excluded, but for sure there can be a point where professional help can be the difference for you, right? Because friends and family are great. Not everyone has that. And so I think to have someone else who can help you process all your emotions. But I like what you said, that your mind is your strongest tool and it influences so much. And mind, body, emotion, it's all tied together. And so when your mind is distraught, your body gets impacted. And it sounds like with the second curveball bringing you closer to your faith, it also made you realize that connection even more in terms of the mind, body, spirit circle, and the importance of investing as much into all elements of your well-being, right? To shift yourself into a more positive outcome and path for your life. How about you, Mom? How did you see your experience helping you grow or change for the better?
Well, first of all, Tia Laura is going back to Europe again. So she
Scary,
has that
scary for
motivation
Europe.
now.
By myself,
This
by
is how you
myself.
work with your curveball and things get better, even if you don't believe it. It certainly helped me. The curveball of the divorce helped me to believe more in myself and push me ahead, because like we were saying, at first you feel like, what did I do wrong? And you begin to doubt yourself, and you have to value yourself no matter how bad you feel. You have to pass that negative feeling and push yourself, like the Laura was saying, your nutrition, exercise, walking, in trying to think positive with your mind. In my case, I went back to college to better my job. I had to learn how to manage a more restricted budget. It's always the financial difficulty. And yeah, I try to read positive readings, of course, going to church. That is the difference. And the thought of my kids always push me ahead, the three wonderful children I have. But it's a process, and there are days that you feel up and there are days you feel down. You have to be consistent, try to better yourself, because there is a tomorrow. And it did taught me, to rely, that I had to learn things that I haven't thought of myself. Little by little, I got a house. I'm about soon to pay it off, and that's what I'm going to leave the children. So yeah, you learn. You believe it or not, you find out how strong you can be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would say for sure in your each of your stories there's a level of strength that I think you didn't know you had, that you were able to tap into, and strength comes from within yourself for sure. It also comes from your community, your friends, your family, the people around you, your faith, right? These are all the things that combined really help you get strong enough to overcome some of these things. And I would just echo and say that was my experience too. And I think really just believing that, again, for me, it was having a vision for myself, because what was driving me was wanting to help a particular community. And I felt like this was a barrier that was testing that. And so it really just made me more reassured in what I wanted to do. But it was all those other elements that helped me drive through the obstacle. And so I think for people listening, I'd be curious what their experiences are. If they've had an obstacle, to share what that was and how they overcame it, what were the things that helped them power through. Certainly, resilience and self-care are really critical, but having a community behind you, for some, having faith or being grounded in something larger than themselves really helps propel them through the challenges and ultimately thrive, right? Not just survive the curveball, but thrive from there. So I really appreciate you both sharing your stories around that, and hopefully it inspires people to, take these curveballs as opportunities to reset and to find a new path. Maybe it's the path they didn't know they were destined for. So on that note, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm Joanna. That's my tia,
Laura.
my mom.
Ana,
And we want to remind you, whether it's good, bad, or funny,
live
Live
it
it
up.
up.